All right, here we go. I have a special guest with us today. He is someone I've seen on a number of different platforms and different audiences in the CX community, sort of a quiet person in the back of the room. And I just thought it would be interesting to have him talk to you about his life, what he's doing in the customer experience industry. I'll elaborate a little bit on why I think it's important. We'll talk about a collaboration we're doing. But before we get too far, Rod, why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
Hi, everybody. My name is Rod Mitchell, and I own a company in Los Angeles called CX&B, and we're a promotional products agency. We're a 53-year-old firm. I inherited the company from my father. I grew up in the business, learned the business at his knee, and so that's why I'm here.
Wow. So your entire life has been in this business. And one of the reasons I find your story interesting to the world of customer experience is because you impact the employee experience so much. I think that the work that you do, the apparel that you produce, it has an effect on corporate culture, sense of identity and a belonging, a kind of unity that is central to the delivery of brands to their audiences and to their customers. Now, you might think of it totally differently from, you know, a process and production standpoint, but that's really my interest. I think that you're more relevant in the world of customer experience than I think you're a humble guy than you've given yourself credit for. Do you tell me about what kind of products do you deliver?
Well, the type of product, the breadth of product is huge. I mean, it can be from a 15-cent pen to a very expensive, like a e-bike or something, thousands of dollars product. But for me, CX is really how we build relationships with our customers. And that's why I'm so obsessed with it.
You're right about that. You know, so many people think of your business, and I remember back in the 80s, it was really a branding exercise, extending your brand through apparel or products. How would you describe your business? Let's start there. What is the totality of your business offering?
Well, the name is kind of nebulous, CX&B. So actually the name, when it was first used, didn't have any meaning. My father and his partner went to an attorney who set up these corporate shells, California Corporation, and that was the name of it. And they wanted it to be generic because they weren't sure what direction they'd take the company, and they took it. But since then, since I've taken over the company, I made it stand for customer experience and brand. Because essentially,
Shut the front door, Rod. Hold on. Are you telling me 50 something years ago, your father named it CXMB and you inherited it at this moment in time?
I inherited the business 6 years ago. Yes. And for 6 years, CX&B has stood for customer experience brand.
Bro, okay. let's just touch on that because I'm a big believer in the universe has some sort of process that we're all system. About 6 years ago is when the customer experience industry started to have its legs under itself. We had the systems and the theories for 20 years before we could implement them. It wasn't until the phones came along and e-commerce became mature that we could offer personalization at scale and get feedback from customers. So you inherited the business with the name CXMB. That's kind of a story all into itself. Well,
Well,
right
let
time,
me
right place.
let me just quickly tell you the story
Yeah.
of the situation. So I worked in the business most of my adult life, and the entire time I was a field sales rep doing corporate sales. And all of that time, we had a fantastic business. I would spend all day in the field with my clients. They would spend hours with me, and we would know each other. And whenever anyone in the company needed anything that was custom, logoed, or branded, they would say, call Rod, call Rod. Okay, then the internet came along, and around 2008, things started to change. A new generation came up into corporations and started to control corporate budgets. And it seemed overnight, but of course it was very gradually. People no longer had time to spend with me and our reps in the field. Corporate sales, although it's the same, completely changed. And so how do you build relationships with people that you cannot see? They don't answer the phone. It just changed everything. And what happened was our business went down, down, and my reaction was work harder, harder, harder. So I worked harder, more hours. I couldn't turn around. It kept going down. That's when my father passed away and I inherited the business. And at that time, we were on our knees. We were not doing well. And so I was searching around, and my wife's a travel agent, and we went on a cruise, and it was in Barbados. Okay. And we went on a very expensive cruise line that I probably could never have afforded to go on. But since she's a travel agent, she got this cruise as an award. She got it free. And on that cruise, I met a guy who happened to be the CEO of a company called Sweetwater. Sweetwater is the largest musical instrument distributor in either the country or the world. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, extremely successful. And so we got friendly with them around the pool, and then we had dinner with them. He proceeded to tell me how he and others, of course, built their company, and they did it through what he called sales engineers, but it was essentially inside sales, people that were very educated. They were musicians themselves, selling to musicians, people that knew musical instruments inside out, and the relationships they would build with each and every one of their customers. And the sales was through the internet, through email, phone, but it was through building relationships. And I realized that's how you build relationships today, by essentially providing excellent customer experience, anticipating clients' needs, caring about them. They have a sense, they feel this, and it makes clients loyal and makes them come back. And so I kind of used him and the model that he laid out, believe it or not. I only spent maybe 4 or 5 hours with him in total on the cruise, but he was very generous, shared. His name was John. I forget his last. John, I wrote it down. John Hopkins. I think he's retired now. But anyway, so CX to me is the new way of corporate sales.
You know, depending upon who you talk to, some people will say CX is the new marketing, CX is the new sales. But I think what you touched on there is there has been a change in the landscape brought about by, maybe if I'm listening to what you're saying, the anonymity almost of the phones, or the distancing that we have because of the digital, e-commerce put this digital barrier between us and shopping, and maybe you were feeling that. But I think what I also found is true is what we never really discuss very much, I don't hear this conversation very much outside of when I'm ranting about it. I think about customer experience as three things: reputation, reach, and relationships. And all three of those things have been redefined over the last 10 years, not by people, not by the industry, not by supply, and not by demand, but they've been redefined by the algorithms. We used to send out press releases over the wire into the media, but now your reputation really has a lot to do with, are you consistently appeasing an algorithm that builds that reputation, the social media algorithms? Advertising, sales, we used to have ways to extend our reach through outbound sales or through advertising, but digital advertising has transformed that part of our industry so that now an algorithm manages that. And the same with relationships. The CRM changed the dynamic of the person-to-person relationship. And the reason I say that is, for me, customer experience is understanding that now you have three algorithms that they're gatekeepers. And if you can't get through those gatekeepers by one way or another, or work in collaboration with those algorithms, then your sales, your marketing, your customer service, your relationships, all of those things, they don't act the way you expect them to.
That's really interesting. I don't know. To me, digital reach and digital advertising is a black box. It's something I admit I don't understand. I don't understand how it works, although I know it's caused a lot of problems in society because we all just see what we agree with and reinforcing our thoughts and opinions. But the way we go to market is entirely through referral. We don't, it's not, we don't do any real outreach other than referral. And so our whole strategy is to provide that service and get referred to the department down the hall, or another firm or whatever. And that's how we're growing our business. And that's how we turned it around.
I love that. I love that you started with the relationship piece of it. I want to just share with you that one of the reasons I'm excited to be the first person to have you on a podcast and tell your story is I want to participate in your evolution into the other digital media channels. So this is part of an exercise of, I want to help expand the awareness of you into the algorithms. I think you're a great guy. We've had many conversations, and I'm just going to start there. Speaking of the relationships, I just think you're a cool guy. That's simple as that. The nice thing is we're in the CX industry together. And when it comes to the value, I want to just talk about this value because I definitely don't expect you to get on here and treat this like a sales platform. But I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you a weird, strange, tangential story. I watched a documentary. It's sad, but I watched a documentary about why people get crushed in crowded events. So why do people get crushed at concerts? And why do people get crushed in stampedes at sporting events? And the research, now follow me on this. I told you it's CX in the wild. It turns out the research shows this really simple, the science shows it. So what happens is if you have a crowd of people and you imagine a door in the center where they're trying to get into the stadium, the outside group wants to get into the place. And if they feel like they're running out of time, they just slowly inch forward. Like they're not pushing, they're just taking a tiny step forward. And that tiny step forward, what it does is it creates a pressure amongst the crowd, like that 5,000 people, they start to get more compacted. And as the valve releases into the building, this valve of people going in and out creates this little reverberation of start, stop, start, stop. And that little wave from the outside of the thousands of people creates compounding pressure on the people who are in the most center, which causes the loss of life. Why am I telling you all this? Turns out not all gatherings of people create these crushed experiences. And what the science found out was this. What a long story. The contributing factor is the sense of personal identity or unity. So when you have people in a crowd where they have a common goal, like protesters, don't stampede or crush each other, you would think that that would be a more hostile or more dangerous environment. But it turns out when everyone in the crowd has a common identity, they work together and they protect each other. But when you have a crowd of people who are all looking out for their own agenda, I need to get into this show, I need to be at this particular place and time, it becomes a dangerous human environment. Now, an easier example to understand is in a airport. When there's a flight delay and everybody gets stranded, turns out people who are stranded together have a common unified purpose. They're like, hey, do you need a sandwich? Or you can go here first, or can I help you do this? People who have a common identity work together. And people who are just trying to get from their plane to their destination, they're jerks. They're just hard to deal with. The reason I tell you all this is it explains my belief system, why I think your business is important. Your business, by putting a logo on a bunch of shirts or handing out a bunch of pens, you create a unified identity, okay? Here's the other thing I think is in an employee experience, having a uniform that you can be proud of, that gives you a common identity and a sense of ownership, is a sense, sort of pride. It makes a big difference. I'll tell you I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I wasn't the most affluent person in the world. And I remember people when they would get like their FedEx shirts, you know, they deliver for FedEx. That FedEx logo became like a symbol of pride. McDonald's went out of their way to create crew gear that you could wear on the subway in New York and not be embarrassed. And these things create a sense of culture, and employees are such an important factor of the non-algorithmic equation of our relationships in business that I'm fascinated by what you do.
Wow. That's, I love that. It explains a lot, actually. You know, it's like when we think only of ourselves, we tend to be upset and unhappy and worried.
Dangerous.
And when we're more caring of others, an affiliate group or family or whatever, we're playing in a higher neighborhood for sure.
Yeah.
And life is so much better. And I think, I don't know, it kind of explains a little bit about society, perhaps. I don't know.
It really does. And I'll dig deeper onto this because this is a customer experience podcast. One of the things that we might find out is this push for hyper personalization has some scientific basis in not being great for the common good. Just like in the stadium example, you know. So I just think that when people are focused on their own individual needs and concerns, and they don't have a sense of purpose or unity with the people around them, whatever that is, there's no affinity. I think that there's less safety. This is just a hypothesis based on this documentary I was watching. But I want to take this even more personal, Rod, to how we got to talking about doing a podcast together. I came to you. So I went out to South Africa, and I visited townships, and I met people who were of all walks of life. And there was a woman and a man who were in a township, and they were gracious enough to me to let me come interview them and talk about their lives, how they are, they experience customer service. And in talking to them, they talked about two things. One was the woman was a social activist, and she tried to empower the children in their community with a fashion show. And they wanted to provide some recognition for these children to inspire them that they could become more than who they were at that moment in time or the context of their economic environment. And their event, some things fell through. It's very hard to produce anything in the townships in South Africa. And her husband, he was an inspirational leader guy in the neighborhood, and he tried to promote a sense of affinity or unity. I think maybe intuitively keying onto this group safety idea by putting positive messages on shirts. Now, when we think about these folks live for a family off of less than $500 a month for the whole month, all expenses in, I thought, how can I help these people? And then I really actually thought, how could Rod and I help these people? And I reached out to you, and you were like, yeah, let's see what we can do to contribute to that part of the universe. Let's see what we can do. And so I say that because your life and your business, and back to your personality, you're willing to help me, some crazy CX guy, random guy, help some people in Africa. I think that's kind of cool. I think that your business has so many more angles to help so many more corporations become more self-aware with their internal safety, their internal affinity, their internal unity, their employee experience. There's a lot of different ways to say it, but that's just me ranting. Rod, do you see that in your business? Do you see when you deliver a whole new brand look and feel for the employees of a company? Do you witness that transformation, or are you focused more on the quality and delivery?
No, I witness a lot. I've seen promotional products used extremely successfully. It gets me excited. I've also seen it used poorly.
Oh, let's hear one
Well,
of each.
well, here's an example. There's a recognition dinner. It's the year, the company's ended the year. They want to thank their people, and so they put on a big dinner, all hands. And the company spends a lot of money on it, and they have a few awards to give to some lower level people that have gone above and beyond to carry the ball. And so the company CEO is getting up and talking. He mispronounces their name. He really doesn't know them. And then he calls them up and gives them a widget of some sort. That's how not to do it. It has to be genuine. So, yes, I'm focused on delivering on time and quality, but really the product is secondary, honestly. It has to be, it's what's in your heart,
I think more people are waking up to that. Tell me an example where these promotional products like nailed it, in your opinion. Whoa, did you see all those balloons just pop
Yeah,
up?
what happened?
That just keeps happening on my
I
screen.
don't
I
know.
don't know what that is, but I must have said something
All my
inspirational.
Well, for success stories, there's lots of them. I mean, I would tell you something. Over the years, I've gotten to experience some incredibly successful firms. And here's the difference between this super successful firms and the firms just hanging on. The super successful firms can't spend enough on their people. They say to me, "Don't you have anything better? Don't you have any?" They're not tied up on saving. It's like they know the importance of their partners, whether they're customers, whether they're staff, whether they're suppliers. They understand that. And so right now, our biggest customer by far is a company called Simpson Strong Tie, and they're a construction supplies firm, and they dominate their field. And their brand is of utmost importance to them, and they brand everything. And they have all kinds of programs where they give product away. They have a program. We toured their largest plant at their headquarters, this like miles long plant where they're building these parts. And they have this program where employees can recognize another, and they give them this. They call it Bark Spot because that was the founder of the company. They give them that, and then employees save those up and they turn them in for the stuff that we do, like a Simpson jacket, also free laundry, this sort of thing. And they love it. And so we met briefly with the plant superintendent. He says, your program, with your giveaway items, they have saved us millions and millions of dollars as far as reportable accidents and productivity, because they promote esprit de corps. They're rallied around that logo, and and you're right, they have pride. I'm on the Simpson team. You can see it when you visit them, and literally they're not trying to save a penny here and a penny there. Their eye is on a higher thing, and I think that's really the success. I have a picture. I had a customer send me some pictures from their recognition dinner. And there's this one picture of this guy, and he's up on the stage, or he's up in front of the room. I don't know if it's a stage. And he's shaking hands with whoever's presenting. His face is like the definition of pure nirvana happiness, because he's being recognized in front of his peers. And it's not, we did these custom Letterman jackets that were indicative of the company, and we put a lot of effort. Very expensive, beautifully made jackets, but it wasn't the jacket, honestly. He was basking in being recognized. Hey, they appreciate what I do. It's all the difference, really.
You're exactly right. Recognition goes a long way. I'll tell you, since you brought up construction, here's an interesting insight about customer experience. I had a friend who went in and did a little undercover work at a couple of big brands, just to see what the customer experiences were like. And here's an interesting thing. At Home Depot, your customer care service desk and others, they have a really, really tough time finding a pen to help write down or fill out forms to help their customers be successful. And it's actually a thing. They don't provide enough pens or pencils. True Value, they have them everywhere with their logos on them. And I just thought there's another example of where a company's investing in their pens and pencils. They're like, if it goes away, great. If it stays here, great. But my team has what it needs to provide this experience or multiple experiences. And it's that little bit of grease or that little bit of release of friction that helps brands be more successful, the purposeful investment that you're saying into the people, what they need, whether it's recognition or supplies. It's just been amazing to me to see how many corners have been cut for employee experiences. I see it everywhere. People being bullpenned into a bunch of small seating arrangements in corporate offices, people, not getting the recognition they deserve. It's a tough environment when the economy demands efficiency over relationships a lot of times. And that's just the fact of how we have to go through life. But
what do you think of the dichotomy? When we talked the other day, you talked about your trip to South Africa,
mm-hmm.
and you made a statement. You said, Rod, this trip changed me. I'm not the same person I was
Mm-hmm.
before I left. You said, at night I go to this 5-star hotel in the lap of luxury, and then during the day I travel to a call center or wherever you were going, and I talk with people that are not in such luck. The crew on the ship were so accommodating, and the service was so good. And then thinking about the crew, their cabins are, probably underneath, small. And, there is a dichotomy, and it's becoming more and more obvious as the world kind of shrinks. Like, I have 2 employees in the Philippines. They're good employees, and they do a good job, and they're living in different circumstances than we are, and they make less money. And so I don't know what to think about all that. It's something that you brought up.
Yeah.
That I've kind of been thinking about, and I don't know. I kind of don't.
So you're sort of similarly, you're sort of in the same boat as me now. I was there and I started to see, I had this inkling before I went to Africa because I was fascinated about the idea of the haves of the world calling the have-nots for satisfaction every day at scale.
Yeah.
And then to see it play out, if I had an enlightening perspective to share on being in the front row seat of going from the have to have not story each day while filming in Africa, I would say that what changed for me is I realized that maybe what's important isn't so much about business. That I think what I realized is I came home with a shorter set of priorities and a more clear vision of, caring about people. When you really get a chance to walk in the shoes of the front lines, you start to realize that they care about the same things you do. They don't have the same things you do. They don't want the same things you do, but they care about the same things you do. And that there was some human truths in there. So, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'm just grateful to have a chance to talk to you and hear about your work, what you're doing. Here's what I think from a business context, Rod, I would share with you, which is there is a trend happening in employee experience. It started to warm up about 18 months ago. As people tried to find a new vernacular for customer experience, there were a large number of people who moved over to the employee experience conversation. Probably a good move because this recognition, this empowerment, and that's really just a matter of going from the inside out to the outside in, or vice versa, but employee experience being from the inside out, delivering great experiences, values, culture, all of these things from the inside out is great. But why I think it's important to you is the trend definitely has been taking hold. And there are a number of platforms and suppliers that are dedicated to the education, the recognition, and when I say recognition, I don't mean just, celebrating or giving people pats on the back. I mean, recognizing employees as individuals in a larger group. So seeing the employee, training the employee, giving them a career path, helping them understand how they're performing, and giving them the recognition and the awards that they deserve. But there are a number of fantastic companies that are doing that it'd be very interesting if you were able to harmonize with one or two of them, because working with a guy like you could make all the difference in the world. And I'll just say, one of the companies that I think has their heart in the right place, because not all of them necessarily do, but there's a company called Amplify AI, and their core mission is about enabling people to be better people. So I'm definitely going to have to introduce you to their CEO, because he's a great guy and he has a good vision. He's somebody also that I respect for his vision and his commitment to trying to take the higher road. So, but I would just offer that to you as an insight. If you look at gamification companies, that's the key word. Gamification in the customer experience space, you'll get a list of them. Yay.
Sorry, did you hear that?
That's why we call it CX in the Wild. So, Rod, thank you for sharing time with me today. Is there anything, now I will put all of your contact information, how to reach you and your business in the posts and in the descriptions for YouTube, etc. But if there was one thing you could say to the rest of the world, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I think you touched very closely on it when you started to talk about love one another.
Somebody really wants, that's a relationship that's very important to you that's calling. Do you need to get that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was.
No, that's fine.
I should have put do not just. Anyway, but it's all about caring for others, and it's the soft. I deal with it every day, running a company and keeping my team motivated in the right direction. It's all about caring about one another, and that's how I would close. And thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit.
Awesome. All right, Rod, thank you so much. And thanks for being on CX in the Wild.
Wonderful. Thank you.